Good evening and welcome to The Report with me, John Rees. On tonight's programme, we'll be looking at Guantanamo Bay 13 years after it opened, at further attacks in Nigeria and at the Algerian community in France. But first, after yesterday's massive demonstration in Paris, the French government is now gearing up for a major security operation. Some 10,000 troops are being deployed across the country. Sarah C. has more on this.
Debris littered central Paris this morning after yesterday's massive demonstration, which mobilised over 3 million people across the country and attracted politicians from across political and national divides. Over 1 million people marched in Paris alone, with the march led by dozens of heads of state. Some commentators said the last time crowds of this size were seen in the capital was at the liberation of Paris from Nazi Germany in 1944. Speaking earlier today, Prime Minister Manuel Valls spoke of the warmth of the crowd and the pride of the demonstrators. But just a few hours later, France's political elite were together again discussing measures to prevent a similar attack from ever happening again. Defence Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian believes that France is still at risk of further attacks, and this morning announced the deployment of thousands of troops in France to step up security.
Ce matin plus particulièrement, le président de la République a demandé aux forces armées de participer à la sécurité des points sensibles du territoire en raison de l'ampleur des menaces qui existent sur notre pays. C'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons décidé, avec le chef d'état-major des armées, de mobiliser 10 000 hommes qui seront en situation de protection des points sensibles sur l'ensemble du territoire jusqu'à dès demain soir. Et la mobilisation a commencé ce matin et se poursuivra grâce à une très grande réactivité de nos forces et un grand professionnalisme, ce qui permettra de contribuer à la sécurité de notre pays.
Interior Minister Bernard Cazeneuve also said that 4,500 police officers would be deployed across all of France's Jewish schools, and that troops would be sent as reinforcements over the next 2 days. This move is the first time troops have been deployed within France on such a major scale.
Well, joining me to discuss all this from Paris is anti-racist activist Danièle Obono, who's also a leading member of the left-wing party, the Front de Gauche, and Labour MP Jeremy Corbyn's here in the studio. Danièle, first of all, just tell us a little bit, what's the atmosphere like in Paris now?
Well, it would be difficult for me to talk to you about the atmosphere yesterday because I didn't attend the demo. But I had a lot of feedbacks, obviously, from a lot of comrades and citizens and people I know who went to the demo, and I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. A lot of people who went to the demo feel like it was the right thing to do to stand up against what they thought was an attack on free speech, and for a lot of good, very good reasons. Within the political circle, the left especially, there are a lot of discussion about was it a good thing to do, and also what are the consequences now, and what impact it is going to have on a lot of things. First, as was said earlier, the measure the government is already taking and is will be taking in the next days and weeks, and how do we react to that? And also on a wider scale, because there was such a mixture of things, even a confusion, in my opinion, in that big movement that happened yesterday. Now that things are just beginning to settle a little bit, I think it will take more days to be able to understand the full impact of what happened yesterday. I think maybe today is a bit early, but what's sure is that the debate, the discussion within the left and in the wider society has just I've just started, and it will continue in the next days and weeks.
Okay, Jeremy, I mean, obviously, like everyone else, those killings should be and have been condemned by every section of society. Do you think, though, that that demonstration might have been more powerful had it not been led by heads of state, many of whom have absolutely appalling records as far as human rights and the treatment of journalists goes?
Well, like you and every normal-thinking person, I was as shocked and appalled by the killings that happened in Paris last week, just as I'm shocked and appalled at the killings that have happened in Nigeria. I've just come from Parliament raising that very issue. But the leadership of the demonstration yesterday by all those heads of government and heads of state, in part, was a study in hypocrisy. There are people there who've been imprisoning journalists. There are people there who've got the most draconian anti-terror laws which do imprison people without charge or trial or access to justice. And I think you're right that a demonstration of popular resentment against the killing, but also a demonstration of a collective and coherent society. A society that embraces multiculturalism, that embraces multilingual life, that embraces all of those things. And whilst I'm shocked and appalled at what happened in France, I hope that they're giving security to the mosques as well. There, after all, have been reports of hand grenades being thrown into a mosque in Le Mans last week. And also, just think for a moment about the degrees of discrimination against the Muslim community in France, the ban on the burqa, for example. And I think if France has got to also embrace multiculturalism in a way that is probably better in Britain than it is in France, because of the completely different trajectory of anti-racist legislation and the concept of a multicultural society rather than the mono-atheist society of France.
Danièle, that security deployment that we saw, those 10,000 troops being deployed, does this feel to you as if it's going to be a short-term response to this particular event, or do you think it looks as if the kind of whole tenure of how French society is policed is going to change?
I think it's not. It can't be a short-term thing, because actually we've been living under a Vigipirate for the past decade. Actually, so it's just an increase in the level of those security measures, and before the attack, before what happened to the journalists and the hostages, there was already a law that had been passed, an anti-terrorist law, which was in the same spirit of all the anti-democratic and anti-terrorist law that had been taken for the past decade, and which was increasing even more those kind of measures. So I don't think it's short term, unfortunately. And I think what happened yesterday is a way to the government, obviously, and the right wing opposition, which is not very opposing anything right now, will go and have been already calling for more measure and more security measure, and even the discussion I heard Jeremy was talking about multiculturalism. I think when the slogan of the demonstration around the idea of republic and things like that enable a lot of people, especially politicians, to call for more measure, in the sense that we have to build the republic as to be defended, not in a way to embrace multiculturalism, but in a way to reject it, actually. And I think that's what the danger ahead are about that also.
Okay. Well, one person that was leading the demonstration yesterday was Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and many people found that surprising. And indeed, we've now seen stories that Francois Hollande didn't want to invite him, but he came anyway. Let's have a look at what he had to say on this clip.
כל יהודי וכל יהודייה, juif, שירצו לעלות לישראל, souhaiteraient monter en Israël et émigrer en Israël, יתקבלו על ידינו בזרועות פתוחות ובלב חם וחפץ, avec les bras ouverts, avec toute notre chaleur. הם לא יגיעו למדינה זרה. Ils n'arriveront pas dans un pays étranger. הם יגיעו לארץ חמדת אבות.
Ils arriveront dans le patrimoine ancestral de leur père.
בעזרת השם.
Avec l'aide de Dieu.
הם יגיעו. וגם רבים מכם תגיעו לבית של כולנו.
Il y a un grand nombre de vous arriveront.
עם ישראל חי. עם ישראל חי.
Jeremy, are you surprised at that message? I mean, you know, you can understand very real concerns in the Jewish community in France. Wouldn't it better to allay those concerns? It didn't seem to be as if that's what he was doing.
It would have been much better if Netanyahu had said Jews are in France and play a huge contribution in French society, as they always have done. Indeed, have suffered discrimination historically and obviously during the Nazi period. Also, that Muslims are in France, that Christians are in France, that Hindus are in France. And if he'd embraced a multicultural society rather than saying the solution to this is for you all to come to Israel, and I'm very disappointed in that. It's interesting that apparently Hollande didn't want him to come and he turned up anyway, which I guess must have presented some kind of diplomatic problem for them. But I think it's not a good message. And then one thinks if he is condemning the killings, as we all do, then there were a very large number of people bombed in Gaza not so long ago. There are children in Israeli jails. There are Palestinian parliamentarians in Israeli jails. If we believe in democracy, free speech, access to justice and multiculturalism, then it applies to all of us.
Danièle, did the fact that there were so many heads of state, many of them from states that are imprisoning journalists and many others, did that produce a debate inside the demonstration and among those who are supporting it?
Among the left, obviously, it was one of the biggest concerns. And the thing with the demonstration is when you have a movement this size, it's really difficult to summarize the thinking, because it was all over the place. So I would say a lot of people, the people who watched the TV and could see that so many horrible people were coming to the demo, just thought that they were going for their own good reasons, and then they went and there were so many people. So it's not the main thing that was discussed for, I would say, the citizens and people of goodwill who went there. But within the left, yes, of course, it's been discussed, but even before the announcement about all the foreign leaders coming, when the call to the demo was actually signed by both the Socialist Party and the UMP, the right wing, and Sarkozy. And from that moment, it became something totally different. It became an organized, a government-organized demonstration. And it started, that's when the debate started, really, because it was obviously from the very start a state-organized march was to be instrumentalized or used by the state to further its own agenda. And the more hour after hour, we just discovered how the whole agenda was not just about the national issues, the issues in France, whether it's economic issues or security issues. It was also an international statement.
Yeah.
So,
okay. Just let me stop you there, because I want to put exactly that point to Jeremy Corbyn in the studio here. Jeremy, Danièle saying there it became an international issue. Are you worried that some of the responses that we've seen, the security responses, will now tip over into British politics? We've heard MI5 calling for greater measures to be used.
Well, miraculously, George Osborne found £100 million for more security measures in our society. We already have very draconian anti-terror laws in Britain. The whole tenor of them has been to protect the security services from any kind of accountability. They cannot be tried in court. Evidence is given in secret courts, all that kind of thing. I think that's going to get worse. The surveillance society will get worse, and it's going to be quite a nasty period for many people. Surely the message is the opposite, that we need a cohesive society. We don't need routine stigmatization of Islam and Muslims. We don't need attacks on mosques any more than we need attacks on synagogues or any other place of worship. Surely the response from all of us who want want to live in this cohesive society is to build that cohesive society, not give increased power of surveillance and arbitrary arrest to the security services.
OK, well, that was Labour MP Jeremy Corbyn, and on the line, Danièle Obono from Paris. Thanks to you both.